Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Barry Caslin here, Teagasc Energy and Rural Development Specialist, and you're very welcome to this week's edition of Farm Business Options. Incidentally, this is the last session of the Farm Business Options series, at least until the end of the summer anyways, and I'd like to introduce today's topic, which is insect farming. And today we have three great panelists. We have Lynda Bolger, who's an insect farmer in Celtic Cricket Farm in Carlo. Good morning, Lynda.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And we have my colleague Carlos Álvarez. Carlos is based at the Teagasc Food Centre in Ashtown in Dublin. Carlos, good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Very well here. Thanks for having us in here in this webinar.
Yeah, and Carlos is also involved in an Interreg project called Valusect, and he'll be talking a bit about that after a while. And also another colleague of Carlos's as well, who's involved in the Valusect project, is Carl Coudron. Carl is from Inagro in Belgium. Good morning, Carl. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
That's good. What's the weather like in Belgium today?
It's beautiful weather today. It's great.
Great. Okay, well, that's the topic for today, is insect farming, and we have part of that is going to be research that's going on in this whole area at the moment. Quite an interesting area. There's a lot of stuff happening in terms of alternative proteins, and we'll be putting in the picture about the options here for edible insects, for whether it's for the human diet or whether it's for the animal diet, from our three panelists today. So if you have any questions, you can put them to our panelists. There's a chat or a Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. You can put your questions in there. We'll put them to the panelists at the end. Our three panelists are going to give a short presentation about their area or involvement in this, and I know they could talk for a lot longer than 7 minutes or 8 minutes about this. They could talk much longer, but we've asked them to condense it down to that amount of time. And at the end of the three talks, we go to the Q&A and put your questions to the panelists. Okay, well, without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker today, and it's my own colleague Carlos Álvarez. Carlos is in the Teagasc Research Centre at Food Research Centre in Ashtown in Dublin. He's a Teagasc research officer. His research interests are focused in recovering compounds of interest from food, co-products, fish, meat, plants, or seaweed sources, and then looking for innovative applications in order to reduce the environmental impact of these industrial activities. He also is trying to identify and characterize and add value to emerging protein sources. And he's using the emerging technologies to make the transition of the food industry to a more sustainable activity. And he's deeply involved. That's a very, very large part of his investigation. So Carlos, if you want to take it from there, I'll turn off my camera and I will give you the floor. Thanks, Carlos.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Barry. I hope you can see my first slide now. So, yeah, I think so. So okay, thank you so much. As Barry said, I'm based in Ashtown, Teagasc, so I'm part of the Department of Food Quality and Sensory Science. And as Barry mentioned, I'm looking for new and alternative protein sources to be used in the food industry. So insects is one of the most promising sources of emerging proteins, and I will try to explain why we're interested in insects and what the Valusect project is about. So the first question we have to answer is why insects? So from a production point of view, we know that the insects, they have a higher feed conversion efficiency when compared with poultry, beef, or pork. Also, the CO2 footprint is much lower. They need less land, or they use less land to produce the same amount of kilograms or the same amount of food to be digested or to be consumed. And also the water consumption is much, much lower than comparing with other sources of protein. So from a sustainability point of view, insects seems to be much more in advantage of the traditional protein sources. Another second question that it's very relevant for this product is the market trends. And as you can see in this figure, it's expected that this market will grow enormously over the next 15-20 years. And this growth will be even higher depending on the legislative frame. So if insects are fully approved to be consumed within Europe, the growth of the market will be even much higher than the trend that it's observed at the moment. A third question of relevance is that insects are an excellent source of high quality protein, which means that the amino acids, which are the essential part or the essential builders of the proteins, in the insects are of very high value because the content of essential amino acids is really high, and they can be as good as another traditional meat sources as pork or beef. So for example, we can see that they can have like around 50 or 70% of protein content in dry bases. A question that we have to keep in mind at the moment is the current European regulatory framework. So at the moment in Europe, only 3 insects are approved to be used as food, which are the locusts, the crickets, and the mealworms. And as per now, not every single country in Europe is allowing the marketing or the trading of insects as a food. So the map is a little bit small, but the red countries at the moment, it is illegal as per the legislation released in 2018. And in a few countries as England, Switzerland, Belgium, or the Netherlands, the marketing of insect-based products, it's allowed. However, there is a trend that this legislation will expand to the other countries in the European Union, and the use of insects will be expanded and more relevant for the other countries, which is not currently legal. So an example of that is that 6 months ago, EFSA, which is the European Food Safety Authority, released a recommendation saying that dry yellow mealworms, one of the species approved for food consumption, is a novel food and is safe to be consumed. So with this in mind, the Valusect project was designed and launched, and it became alive 2 years ago now. And in this project, it's composed by more than 20 partners, and they are based in UK, Ireland, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And it's composed by research institutions, public agencies, insect producers, marketing people, others partners. They will enable our conversations with lawmakers, with representatives of food consumers. So we're trying to cover every single aspect that can have an impact on how to accelerate the integration of insects in our food chain. So the main aims and objectives of our Valusect project is to investigate the use of food co-products as substrates, which means that we can use co-products or raw materials that are not suitable to be used anymore in the food chain, but we can use this to feed our insects. We're trying to determine what is the impact of these substrates and the processing practices on the nutritional and the final properties of our products. It can be as a dry powder ingredient, or it can be less a part of a formulation, let's say in a burger or a sausage and a snack, or even in a shake powder. We will be doing as well a survey on products already in the market. So we need to determine the shelf life, the nutritional value. So we're trying to build a database with all this information that will be public available in the future. So that establish like a baseline that where are we at the moment and where we want to go in the future. And finally, we are trying to do consumer studies to see what is the consumer perception of insects when included in food formulation or as a whole meal, and also sensory panels to determine what is the acceptance of the flavors or the taste of the products that insects are part of the ingredients, are one of the ingredients. One of the main efforts that we're doing in the Valusect project is the Voucher Scheme. So what we're trying to do with this Voucher Scheme is to provide knowledge and support to companies interested in any aspect of the insect-based product. So it can be either to develop a new recipe, it can be to get understanding of consumer trends, understanding about the legislation, or what is the best way to perform a sensory panel to see if our product is good enough to be in the market. And for this, we have a total of 40 vouchers that the value can be either 10, 20, or 40,000 euros. And all SMEs based in the Northwest region, UK, Ireland, Belgium, and Netherlands are eligible for that one. We have a manual of services that I will show in a minute. Recently, we got the scope of our projects expanded, so now we can include black soldier fly for feed purposes, but we can also try to investigate for food purposes, because it is envisaged that this insect, the black soldier fly, will be soon approved as food as well. So in this picture, I tried to summarize what are the services that the Valusect consortium can provide to the applicants to this voucher scheme. So we have the technological services to develop, implement new processes or new techniques. We have the food development and innovation, which means to develop new recipes, new type of foods, how to integrate insects in more traditional foods so they will be more acceptable for the consumers. We have, as an addition to that, consumer acceptance. So what we can do to make these products more available for the consumers and increase acceptability in the market. And finally, we have a strategic business service. So we will provide support to develop new products, new ideas, and how to bring them to the actual market. So just finishing now, just a few take-home messages that inserts are a growing and a promising source of high-quality proteins. The legislative framework is getting more favorable, so we think that the market will increase and it will be easier to develop products using insects. So this is a new market in Europe, and still many questions need to be answered. And in the Valusect project, we are trying to answer some of these questions of relevance. And finally, that while we're trying to answer these research questions, we want to give support to SMEs that operates in the agri-food sector. So that's it from my side. I hope.
Okay, Carlos, that's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
And Carlos, you spoke there about the Valusect project there and the voucher scheme. Can you just tell us a bit, as Carl is getting prepared there, can you tell us a bit about the Valusect project and the voucher scheme associated with it, please? Who's eligible for that? What type of candidates are you looking for? Are it people who are already established in insect farming who are looking for?
No, in fact, any type of food business operator that they have an interest on moving or expanding their activities using insects, they are welcome to apply for the vouchers. If you are already operating as an insect farmer or an insect producer, you are welcome as well. So the idea is to bring support to people that want to start in this arena or they are already operating on that. And for example, we had a first call that was finished by the end of December last year, January this year, and we got like 60 applicants to this voucher scheme. And we are opening a new call at the end of this year. I think it's around November, it will be announced. And we will be opening this for new applicants or applicants that they got the feedback from the previous one, so they can improve their applications to be more in scope with with what we're proposing in the voucher scheme.
Okay, so if any of you have any more questions for Carlos about the voucher scheme or the Valusect project, you can put them into the Q&A function there. We'll put those to them at the very end. So thanks for that, Carlos, for the moment. And I'm going to go straight now to Carl Coudron. Carl is also involved in the Valusect project, and he's also he's a project engineer at Inagro, and they have their own dedicated insect research center at Inagro in Belgium there. So at their insect research center, they have 125 meters square of rearing space for 6 climate controlled rooms. This allows them to perform innovative pilot scale research mimicking the commercial industry, and therefore Carl's research has direct implications for the European agro industry and government decision making. His research focuses mainly on optimizing the reproduction, production and quality of the 3 commercially most important species, the black soldier flies, yellow mealworm and crickets. So Carl, great to have you here today, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, then I'll dive straight into it. So at Inagro, we perform research at pilot scale since 2016. I'm talking about insect production. We produce insects, and of course, insects are a very diverse there are a lot of species, insect species in the world. Now we focus on the three most important ones, like soldier fly, which can go to feed, animal feed. We have the house cricket, which is an interesting one for food, and we have the mealworm, also a very well-known one, also for food, but also for feed. I think it's important to notice right here that they are very diverse in their life cycle, and that's very important when you try to rear insects, that you understand the life cycle. Each insect species has its optimal temperature, its optimal relative humidity. The feed of the insects will vary depending on the species. So it's very important if you rear a species, it's you need to be a specialist in it and really understand the life cycle of each insect. Just to give you all an idea of what an insect farm looks like, I added some pictures. For example, right here we have a house cricket farm in Thailand. You have a lot of house cricket farming in Thailand, so that's a very popular business over there. On the left, you have a more original farm. On the right, you have an idea of what modern insect farms and especially cricket farms look like. And that it is an enclosed environment at a set temperature and a lot of crates. So that's one of the advantages of insects in general, that you have a lot of layers. You can work vertically instead of only at one layer. So that is something that you'll see in other insect species as well. The life cycle is a little bit different, but you'll have a lot of, for example, for black soldier fly, a lot of stacked crates. Again, we go in height, not only using one surface area. Right here we have the black soldier fly. You can see them right here in the crates. Of course, we have a very special life cycle with black soldier fly. On the left, you can see the egg production. So we want to produce the larvae as a source of protein. But on the left, of course, you need the flies to produce eggs, and these eggs you'll raise up until larvae. And on the left, you can see how that works. So you see the cages at which the flies live. And right there, we are going to produce the eggs. It's just to give you an idea of how an insect farm looks like. Don't have the time to go into detail. But again, a very similar view when we look at mealworm production. Right here on the right, you see an insect, a mealworm farm. So again, a hall of certain dimensions filled with stacked crates and a lot of crates. So that's about the red line for all insects that you can keep in mind. Then on the left, you can see how we harvest these insects. So when we empty these crates, we throw them on a sieve, and the insects are separated from their substrate, and you can harvest the pure insects, in this case, the mealworms. So just to give you an idea what an insect farm looks like, then I'm going to talk very briefly about insect feeds, because generally insects are sold as a way to process substrates, and they can handle a lot of substrates. For example, catering waste, so all the leftovers from restaurants, from households. This could be a suitable source for insects. However, unfortunately, Europe doesn't allow for this. At the moment, insects can be fed with the same feeds that you can give to pigs and to poultry. So catering waste, unfortunately, not an option yet. Manure, unfortunately, not an option yet. You can give them declined fruits and plant residues, but right here we have sunburned apples, which are perfectly fine. Byproducts from the agri-food chain on the left, on the bottom. In this case, what you see is a side stream from bioethanol production. These two are allowed, and what will be allowed probably in the near future by Europe is pre-consumer waste. What is that? That is the leftovers from supermarkets. So Europe is working on that one to allow this one as well, but at the moment we are limited to the same feeds that we can give to chickens and to pigs. Now, if you want to start up an insect farm, of course, it's important to have a good idea of all the costs that come with it. And that's why I made a brief overview.
Carl, sorry, your voice is becoming a bit muffled as you're moving. Your microphone isn't coming in clear as you move from left to right. So
I'll sit a little bit closer to my screen.
Yeah,
then.
Thank you.
Okay, so right here we have the investments. The big things, of course, you need a building. You need air treatment because you need to heat up your rooms where you rear your insects to a certain degree. You need to have air circulation and ventilation. So these are the air treatments that you need. You need crates, a lot of crates. A crate washer, of course, if you have a lot of crates, you'll make a lot of crates dirty. So a crate washer is not a luxury right there. You need a sieving installation or a way to harvest your insects. You need a feed installation to fill up your crates and supply feed inside each crate. And then you have a lot of running costs as well. For example, neonates, if you are a producer, an insect farmer, and you decide just to raise your eggs up until a certain point and then harvest them and sell eggs again. Or you have farmers that have the entire life cycle at their farm and that keep adults to produce their own eggs. So that's possible as well. That's why it's in between brackets. You have, of course, the insect feed. Preferably it's as cheap as possible and it is a residue that you don't have any costs associated with it. You need water for cleaning, of course, electricity for ventilation and stuff like that, powering your machines, heating of the rooms, and labor. And that's a very important one. At the moment, insect production is still quite labor intensive. So it's an important one to keep that in mind. Okay, you have an idea of the costs right now. And then I'll talk about market opportunities very briefly. There are a lot of options that you can sell your insects to. One of them is as a poultry or chicken feed. Honestly, in Belgium, I think at the moment, selling insects as a pure soy replacement, they are still too expensive. But insects are associated with added benefits for animal welfare. So that's an opportunity that could be used in animal or in livestock farming. Another one that the bigger companies are looking at is aquaculture feed, and using insects as a fish meal replacement, as a soy of sustainable protein instead of fish meal. For example, right here we have salmons or trout are examples of commercially reared fish that are fed with fish meal. So that would be more sustainable to use insects. Another one is as cat and dog feed. So on the left we have a dog feed from Germany that is already on the market. On the right we have a Canadian cat feed. So these products are already on the market and are selling quite well, actually. Of course, we have human food. That is what Valusect is all about. We have an example from the Belgian market, cricket bar, protein bar. Of course, you can just process them or eat them whole, but I think consumers will prefer the processed form as it is less visible that you are eating insects. And I think in Belgium right now, still the biggest market for insect producers is the hobby market. So as fish bait, reptile feed, bird feed. So most insect producers in Belgium will focus on this market still, but the other ones are growing. One last slide, or only 2 slides left. I'm going to talk briefly about the market, and it determines the scale that you need to produce at. For example, if you produce for aquaculture, you'll need tons and tons per week, very important, just to supply the market. They demand huge quantities. So your scale needs to be big. That's why it's on the far right end. But of course, I told you that insect farming is very labor intensive. So that means that actually to make it commercially viable, you need a lot of automation and a big investment as a consequence. This way will reduce labor costs at the product, but it's not for everyone. You'll need just the scale and that the budget is not for everyone. The other option is producing insects for food trucks. Then you may need 10 kilograms, 100 kilograms each week, which is easily done or more easily done. You don't need the big scale to do that. So your investment can be a lot lower. That's why we are more to the center of this graph. You don't need all that automation, but your insect product will be more labor to produce, so you have more labor costs. So I think it's important take-home message to keep in mind that if you have a certain market in mind, that your scale needs to be appropriate to that market. So in conclusion, insect farming covers a wide range and many different species are grown commercially already, but insect farming requires in-depth knowledge of the species and adaptive equipment to be able to farm them efficiently. And as a conclusion, the market you have in mind will determine scale and degree of automation that is to be commercially viable, especially in Western Europe. Of course, in other countries, labor is more cheap and you have other alternatives. But I think that is the way to go if you want to go big and aim for these big markets. That's it for me. That was clear.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, Carl. Thanks very much. You've opened up a whole new world to me here. People say if you don't eat fish, you're missing out a lot, but this is a whole new world again. of a protein source. So quite interesting. If you could just stop sharing your screen there, Carl.
Yes, sorry.
And we'll get
My
Lynn up there now.
Stop sharing. Yes.
Yeah, just in terms of the amount of investment that's involved, and there's questions coming in for you there at the moment. Somebody's asked the question, will these slides be shared afterwards? The answer is yes. We will be putting the slides up on the screen afterwards. So just in terms of the investment that's required in this, you're talking about this both from an animal feed perspective. I know the Valusect project looks really for human feed only.
Yes.
But you're looking at insect research from animal perspective and also for human perspective.
All perspectives, yes. You have a different legislation. So of course, if you farm insects for food, you'll be controlled, or you have a lot more food agencies that will come knocking on your door. But in terms of investment, I think if you produce for food, you can stay smaller and your initial investment will just be a lot lower. So it's really determining which market am I looking at, which will determine your business plan in the end. So that's, I think, the most important one.
And you kind of, obviously you can have a very controlled environment, I mean, with high levels of automation as well.
Yeah.
And we can discuss that maybe afterwards, and the whole legislation side of it as well. So at this stage, thanks very much for that, Carl. And we're going to go to Lynda now at this stage. So Lynda Bolger in Carlow. Good morning, Lynda. How are you?
Good morning, Barry. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here, Lynda. So Lynda, you're the owner of Celtic Cricket Farm. You're trying to diversify your family farm enterprise by introducing a new sustainable stream of income through alternative source of protein as animal feed, whilst keeping a blueprint for their environment. You believe in farming with biodiversity at the centre, mindfully reducing your carbon footprint and proudly accomplishing a complete single estate operation. You're going to be speaking about the opportunities arising and the challenges you faced in the last 3 years of setting up Celtic Cricket Farm. Lynda, over to you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. My name is Lynda Bolger, and as Barry said there, I'm the founder of Ireland's very first cricket farm, Celtic Cricket Farm. We're very small. Just to give you a background about ourselves, a very small farm here. We have dry cattle and sheep, and it is very much a case of wanting to keep that blueprint for the environment and I suppose make the farm very sustainable. There are 3 generations living here on this family homestead, and there's myself and Tommy, our parents-in-law, and then our kids that are here as well. Tommy, and the realistic is that the reality here is with 50 acres, we all have to have full-time jobs. Tommy is a mechanic down in Boris with Kelly's Alvarez. Mary, my mother-in-law, she's a financial controller, and I'm the owner of Flag Lane Marketing, a prestigious accredited All Ireland Business Foundation accredited this year. My father-in-law, Paddy, he's now retired, having spent 40 years below in Kelly's Alvarez as well. But like every other farmer, we've really wanted to come up with a different and alternative idea of making our land here, the land of our ancestors, more profitable, and really, I suppose, digging into looking after the farm and looking at different business options. We looked at snails to different types of livestock, from the Boris Yo to growing strawberries, and we never could really find anything that we were genuinely interested in until we discovered the cricket on a trip to Stockholm in 2018. So that was quite interesting. I went to the gym with my brother, and afterwards I tried a protein shake, which I really loved. And I said, wow, what's this? And he said, oh, this is the protein shake that I picked up off the shelf at one of the multis. And I said, wow, it's really nice. Let's have a taste of it. And haven't actually read the back of the pack. I couldn't actually believe that I was drinking crickets and cricket protein. So I returned home, got to work, and said, what is all this about? I'm sure there's something to be learned. And this is my journey ever since. So in 2018, I discovered the cricket. In 2019, I really, from a business point of view, as Carl just before me hit on all of the sections there, I really went into a bit of a market research phase, which is, to be honest, ongoing. I'm constantly learning. I've learned even from today from Carlos and Carl there with the slides. So if we think we know everything, certainly not. You know, in 2019, the whole footprint was all about market research, feasibility study, really understanding the market and actually seeing, is it actually a viable business option to diversify the farm here. 2020, I met up with Entocube in Finland. They're very similar to Carl, except they're a Finnish body, and literally I've been going through training ever since about how to breed, how to raise, how to look after the crickets, the controlled environments that's needed, and what has to happen in order to have a successful pinheads and adult crickets within 62 days, because I'm telling you now, they are the bane of my life. Just trying to get to know them upside down, inside out and backwards. And from now, 2021, we are really ready to scale up and really looking into a sustainable source of protein, keeping a blueprint for the environment, and really, I suppose, proudly doing this from a single estate operation is the whole opportunity here. The opportunities, as you can see, are absolutely endless. The nutritional value is incredible, as you can see there from the lads' presentation. The climate change options, huge climate change options. And by the year 2050, there's an extra 1 billion people going to be on this planet. And by the year 2050, which is, by the way, only in 30 years' time, sometimes 2050 might seem centuries away, but actually it's in only 30 years when we really think about it and boil it down. There will be literally 35 million livestock on the planet that have to be fed. So the opportunities are absolutely huge. The biggest, I suppose, challenge that I found, as you could see from Carlos's presentation in the very beginning, is not many people want to eat crickets. We even had somebody put in the chat that they've even put off the thought about dinner this evening. So out to date, out of 6,000 people that I've asked would they eat a cricket, 7 out of 10 of them said no. Number one reason is they are disgusted by that fact. So that really pushes me on to diversifying, choosing, I suppose, having a choice of whether we're going to go down the road of feed or food here in Carlow. And for me, I'm personally going down the road of feed. It is up to everybody if they want to do food. Obviously, Carlos and Carl there are very interested in the food section. For me personally, it is all about the feed. Why? Because 90% of deforestation in Brazil is due to farming soya. I mean, it is incredible what's going on there over there from an environmental impact. Genetically modified, all soya is genetically not modified, and only 3 countries grow soya at the moment. By 2050, as I said, there will have to be an alternative source of feed due to the 35 billion projected livestock. That doesn't include the domestic pet sector, actually, by the way. And as we could see earlier, we have actually on the market now some feeds for cats, dogs and fish. There will also have to be an alternative source of protein for all of these animals that's out there, and that's where I'm coming in from Celtic Cricket Farm. So thank you very much for having me on today, and I'm back to you now, Barry. So that's brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thanks a million, Lynda. That's great overview. We've had a great mix of speakers here today from both the feed side and the food side, and as well as the Valusect project as well, hearing about what's happening on the research side as well. So good questions coming in there to you as well. Just one question there for you, Lynda. Where do you source your crickets?
My very first batch of crickets came in from Finland, and they came in an egg format, and then we had to make sure the housing conditions were right for them to hatch. So that's the very first batch came from Finland, but they're very hard to be sourced. And I suppose I wanted to hang out with people who were in the industry, because one of the challenges I've found in Ireland is I've made huge phone calls to the Irish Food Safety Authority, just for some information in the very beginning, because it was something I was genuinely very passionate about, genuinely very interested about. And they literally told me, as Carlos said, that it is illegal for you to farm insects in Ireland. So I have been doing this undercover for the last couple of years, just to kind of really do some research and get a handle on what it's all about. But that is one of the biggest challenges that I found, is that, you know, you're literally, it is illegal here, and it is looked upon as, you have to jump through hoops then to get, there is a kind of a blue circle that you can get through, but it's a novel food sector. But there are certainly, you have to jump through hoops in order to do that. But yes, from Finland.
Yeah, and I've come across this with novel foods in relation to hemp as well. I think it's when the food that wasn't produced prior to 96 or 97. And obviously insects fall into that category as well. So the agency you're generally dealing with here is the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. Is the Department of Agriculture involved in this as well?
Not at the moment, but they are opening up, Barry, they are certainly opening up other alternative to protein, because they realise they have to have an alternative. The feed sector is about to double within the next 30 years. The soya, they just can't keep up to it, because, you know, there's 90% of deforestation going on over the far side of the world. The environmental impact is huge. And from our point of view, it's a no-brainer. Here we have a cricket, mealworms, so black soldier flies, loads of other insects that can actually fill the void of an alternative source of protein. So certainly it is out there and ready to be explored.
And Carol, you mentioned this in your presentation as well about the whole legislative side, and you mentioned some countries where there's no issues at all, like Switzerland. Is it the same in Belgium? Is it the same in many countries across Europe where the legislation needs to be changed?
Yeah, I can ask a little bit of that. So some of the countries where you can get insect-based product is because they were already usual in the shelf markets before 2018. So they didn't have to go through this novel food legislation. But for other countries, as in Ireland, that insects were not in the market or were not found in the supermarkets, you have to go through this novel food application, which can take a couple of years. But now, because the legislation is moving on and they're progressing on these questions, I think it will be easier to get your food products on the shelves. And something you mentioned before, Barry, about the new protein sources, the department is involved in that, in the sense that they are funding projects looking for alternative protein sources. So, for example, from Teagasc and UCC, UCD, and other research bodies, we are looking for alternatives. As it could be from the sea, it could be from the hemp, from alternative crops, or another type of plant-based materials. So that's a big scope of research at the moment, and very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Carl, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, well, maybe I can elaborate a little bit about farmed animals. So I think this was a problem several years ago in Europe in general, that insects were placed inside a category that was already existing. And then they put insects together with poultry and with crickets. So all the legislation that was applicable to these two species was also applicable to insects. And that was, of course, a big trouble, because at the beginning you needed to seduce your insects one by one and have them slaughtered one by one to be completely okay to have it done right. So that was a problem in the beginning, but now Europe is changing slowly but certainly, and more there is a insect-specific legislation. And you have in Europe you have IPIF. It's an organization that bundles all insect producers in Europe, and they are really pushing at the European Commission to change the legislation in their benefit and to have a good legislation. I mentioned it about the substrates that you can give to insects as well. That is still a problem, because the most interesting substrates for insects would be household waste, pre-consumer waste, stuff like that. Again, the same legislation was applicable due to the mad cow disease. You can't give household waste to pigs, to chickens, but Europe is changing again slowly but certainly. So more and more will be possible, and it will only benefit insect production, because they will become more and more sustainable that way. If you have to yes?
You mentioned the slaughtering of insects. I mean, I'm finding this hard to imagine. Are they gassed, or how are they actually killed?
We kill them. I think the most used way is boiling them very shortly. So they are thrown alive in boiling water, and within a second they are killed. And it's the most humane way actually to kill them, and also it is the best way to sterilize them, to kill off all the pathogens that might be present. So that's how it's usually done.
And is there a risk?
Maybe Lynda has a.
Is there a high risk of pathogen transfer from these insects to humans, unless you did that, or how high is that risk? Normally, if you have the good processing line, insects should be completely safe for human consumption. Of course, if you're eating live insects, you might get some pathogens. That's not something, but of course, these that you will find on the market will be processed and completely safe.
Something that was mentioned in this IPSA report about the safety of mealworms is that if you follow the regular processing chain with the boiling step and so on, they're safe to be consumed. There is no transmission of pathogens because they're killed. But you have to keep in mind that some allergies might be there, as it happens with seafood or other type of products. But still, it's safe if you know that you are allergic to these shrimps or gambas or things like that. It might happen that you have allergies to insects, but that's the main concern at the moment. So. And
Carlos, is it when you say mealworms, are you eating the larvae of the mealworm, or are you eating the actual mealworm itself, the adult?
It's the larva.
The larva, okay. Yeah. A question has come in here as well that you've spoken a lot about crickets and mealworms, and somebody's asked the question: can you eat ants and grasshoppers?
You can. You can eat a lot of insects, but I think in Europe only, Carlos mentioned it already, three are really relevant at the moment. Mm-hmm. But actually there are thousands of edible species. I know in Africa, for example, they eat and wild harvest mopane caterpillars, which are very popular over there, or quite popular, maybe not that popular. But just to there are a lot of opportunities, and at the moment we are still limited to a very small fraction of all possibilities in Europe.
Okay, another question has come in. Are there examples around Europe where scientists, chefs and insect farmers are coming together looking at how insect production for human consumption and for animal feed can move forward as a growth industry here in Ireland and maybe in Europe? And maybe that's what Valusect is doing, but maybe if any of you want to come on that, Carl or Carlos. For examples maybe where chefs, scientists and insect farmers are coming together.
As far as I know, I don't know any example of that, but I do know that one of our partners, that they are based in Switzerland, they are doing a lot of sensory panels and a lot of panelists to get them testing new products from insects. And one of the persons in the team he's a trained chef. He's a trained chef, so I think he joined the project very recently, and I think he will be looking at how you can deliver new recipes, how you can deliver dishes and plates that are attractive to the people, even though they are not willing to taste insects, because the format, it's very, very important.
Yeah, it's something you really associate with Asia, and I've seen this in Asia where people actually eat them live on the streets, and they're so live on the streets. But this is obviously something that it may catch on in Western Europe in the years to come because of the demand for protein, and as Lynda was saying about the increase in population as well. Are there examples of insect restaurants out there?
In Belgium, you had one in Ghent. I don't know if it's still existing due to Corona right now, so that's a bit of a bummer. But in the end, I think in Belgium, you have a lot of initiatives to get insects in food. For example, we know a farmer which usually has a local farm and a local shop, and it sells minced meat from his pork. And now he's thinking about making it more sustainable by mixing in by mixing in mealworms and making it 30%, I believe. So you're eating actually a burger with 30% mealworm, but you don't taste it. It tastes the same as minced meat. So there are a lot of initiatives. Some countries are going faster than others. That's true. I think in Belgium you have quite a progressive public that's open to it, but still it's a niche, a small part of the consumers that is already willing to eat insects.
Yeah. A question here: how much time should I be setting aside each day for cleaning, feeding, and breeding insects? So this is kind of a question on the labour requirement. Maybe Lynda, if you want to come in on this, or Carlos either.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the size of the farm. Obviously, the bigger you get, the more labour intense it is, and the more washing of crates and everything that you have to do. But really, it depends on the size of your farm to begin with. If you're starting off, I would suggest maybe 10 or 20,000 eggs just to start with, which is basically 2 bins of crickets or mealworms, just to get used to them, learn about them, see what you think of them, because at the end of the day they are creepy crawlies, and if you don't like creepy crawlies, there is no point in being in insect farming, because they do, you know, they are very, if you're afraid of spiders and creepy crawlies, it's not the industry for you. You know, so definitely, I would get maybe 10 or 20,000 eggs to begin with, and see how you get on with them, see what the farming conditions are you need, or the special conditions you need, and see can that suit you, and see can you start there to move on. What do you think, Carl?
Well, we have some numbers, but not for all species. So it's correct what you say. It depends on the scale, but it also depends on the species. And just to give you an idea, if you have a very low input production, for example, you don't have any mechanical sieving and stuff like that, then we take around 7 minutes to produce 1 kilogram of mealworm. That's give or take what it takes. Yeah. For black soldier fly, it's around 2 minutes, I believe, to produce 1 kilogram of live insect. So that can give an idea. If you're a farm that produces 100 kilogram per week, yeah, then you need to put into it 700 minutes. So what's that, like 10 hours? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another question, lots of questions coming in for you guys, and a lot of interest in this as well. And this is quite an interesting question. What size footprint, and maybe you don't have an answer for it today, but maybe we can get to it maybe later on. What size footprint would produce the same amount of protein as a hectare of soya? I don't know if any of you have an answer for that.
Do you really mean like global warming footprint, or just surface area footprint?
I think, yeah, exactly. I think it's the surface area. So a hectare of soya, what that would produce, and make a comparator that to the protein that would be produced from insects.
I have some numbers, but maybe
okay, maybe we'll come to that one afterwards. Okay. What is known about the welfare needs of intensively farmed insects? How is their welfare considered and provided for?
I think the easiest way to answer that, if you want to produce insects fast, if they grow as fast as possibly, then they are happy. If they don't grow fast, there is something that is constraining their growth. There is stress, it's cold, whatever. So by maintaining optimal conditions, the insects are as happy as possible. Of course, you need to kill them off at a certain point, but I mentioned it. Yeah, boiling them, they are dead within a second. So that's really, it's quite fast, or quite good animal welfare.
Another question here, I suppose this is somebody worried about maybe the neighbours next door. What's the level of noise and smell associated with them?
May I answer, Lynda?
Yes.
Or do you?
Yes. Lynda can come in afterwards if she likes.
Yeah. So I think it, again, depends on the species. So I know crickets can produce, they sing or they chirp, maybe, I don't know the correct term. So they make noise, but of course they are in enclosed environments and the noise doesn't get really out of that. But I think one major problem might be when you rear black soldier fly is that they produce smell. And that's a problem that is known. For example, a bigger company in the Netherlands, Pultix, has complaints from neighbors that they are too smelly. Other insect species like mealworm and crickets don't really have that smell production. So that will be less of a problem with these. Maybe Lynda has something to add.
Yeah, no, I don't notice the smell, to be honest, at all. But at the same time, they certainly do chirp, and it's the male cricket that chirps when they're breeding. So they certainly do chirp, but the house that's used would normally be very well insulated and has, from that it has the noise capacity down. But I'm sure that once we start to upscale here, we certainly will have chirping crickets, because even Mary was saying here, are you going to put that shed as far away from the house as you can? But personally, I find it very what's the word? You're very much a zen when you go in there. It's very much, it really does help with the sound therapy.
A question came in for you there, Lynda, about the certification. You mentioned there's no proper certification from the Food Safety Authority of Ireland at the moment. And the question that came in is, must we make do with insects bred in the Netherlands, Belgium, Spain and France to develop recipes in Ireland until we get proper certification here in Ireland?
Yeah, as Carlos said, that it is approved in Europe. It just hasn't been rubber stamped by our Irish government yet, and it is very much just a case of getting that bill in front of the government and getting them to stamp it. And as soon as that is, we'll be able to the ground will open up for ourselves. And that is coming very close, because I have been on about this since 2018 to them. So that rubber stamp is literally, should be months away, as they told me not too long ago.
So when this has been properly certified, should we be dealing with the Food Safety Authority of Ireland and environmental health officers as well? And should the Department of Agriculture be involved in this also? I'm just wondering what government departments should be involved from that, maybe where this has been done properly, where you have the proper instruments in place in other countries across Europe. What government departments should be involved?
Yeah, I think the Food Safety Authority of Ireland will have to be involved if you're producing a food. Definitely, if you're producing a food, the department will be involved. Certainly, if you're producing a feed, and possibly the food safety if it's a feed as well. But if you're going down the route of food, definitely they will be involved.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah, well, I was just calculating a little bit, so I missed the question. My apologies for that.
Okay.
But I was calculating how much protein you can produce on a 1 hectare of insect farm. Well, for mealworms, it would be around 144 tons of pure protein on 1 hectare. And for black soldier fly, it's 5-fold. So it's around 720 tons. So it's, just due to the fact that you can work in multiple layers, you're just being way more efficient than production way.
Okay, and the certification bodies that should be involved across Europe, are that from when this is done properly, what certification should be required? What government departments are involved in most countries that are doing this properly, Carl?
It's per country, so there's not a European legislation on that part. But in Belgium, for example, you need to be known to it's called FAVV, so it's a local food safety agency that just want to know who is producing insects. But of course, if you want to process them further to food applications, then you'll need to show they'll visit you once or twice a year and look how hygienic your processing line is and stuff like that. So it depends how far you go, how far you process, which control and which certificates you need.
Okay, lots of questions coming in here, and we have very little time left. The question maybe for Carlos, can you discuss the feed conversion efficiency of insects versus cattle? That can be a difficult question, Carlos.
I have to look to the numbers. I have the numbers in here, but for feed efficiency, the insects are much better than cattle. I don't remember exactly the figure, but I can look into that. And also you have to keep in mind that it's not just the amount of feed they need to generate a gram of protein or a kilogram of pure protein, but also you need less water, which is very important because I will know that cattle and pork feed, they require a lot of water consumption. And also, as we mentioned before, based on Carl numbers, the soil or the land you need to generate the same amount of protein is much less reduced. But yeah, the growing rate, for example, for cattle is higher because they are bigger animals. They grow faster in general terms, but the efficiency is much better for insects.
Okay, a good question in here. Where are the markets? So maybe Lynda can come in from the feed perspective and the food perspective, maybe Carl or Carlos.
Could you repeat the question? What was it about the markets?
Just a simple question. Where are the markets for insects? Is there a European market, or are we looking at markets in Asia to export?
I think at the moment, I mentioned it, it's mostly like local in Belgium for hobby animals, so in local stores. And then these one will ask for 10 kilograms or 20 kilograms per week. So you have a lot of these hobby shops. So that's one opportunity. And otherwise, there are still a lot of bilateral collaborations. I think there's not one central pool of markets that you can sell to and sell from. But maybe Lynda has more knowledge about that.
Yeah, Lynda, maybe from the perspective of people thinking about this here in Ireland, what are the markets? I know you look at this from a feed perspective more than a food perspective, but maybe where would you be looking at for marketing?
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on this, Barry, especially in a feasibility study, just to see, is it feasible? Exactly that. Where are the markets was the question. The market is any single company out there at the moment that is already producing feed for animals, okay? The market is a $179 billion market that's out there at the moment, so that's your market. But on top of that, like let's say, for example, we have Red Mills and Glanbia here in Ireland, who are huge international feed companies right across Europe, right across the globe. And really, what do they need from us? We have to be very, I suppose, efficient in our pricing plan, giving them an alternative source of protein other than soya to implement into their feed. If we can match on price, then we can talk about markets. But at the moment, if we can't match on price, you know, it will be very difficult to even impede on that market. But the other markets are, you know, if you made your own dog and cat food, if you came up with your own alternative production within your own farming business and farming enterprise there, then it's up to you to make sure that that market is successful. But certainly, by rubbing shoulders with, I am in talks with a French company at the moment who have feed. So certainly, it is an opportunity for Irish companies out there to, if we produce enough of it. The problem is at the moment is scalability. Yeah. I don't have enough protein to even talk to Red Mills, to even go to Glanbia and even sit around the table, because they need hundreds and hundreds of tons of protein.
Would you be looking for people to contact you and that you'd set up a kind of a cooperative out of this and maybe improve the scalability of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we have so many cricket farmers in Ireland, then we can go to the Department and the Food Safety Authority of Ireland and hurry up this bill and get it actually passed so we can all get back to work.
Okay. Another question, guys, we're really tight on time, and if you can answer these as quickly as possible. What type of buildings are required? Could you use a former calf rearing shed? Carlos, maybe from the feed, the food point of view?
Well, I'm not very familiar with the facilities because I'm more in the research type of the side of the things. Yeah. But I guess if you are going for food production, you have to have a food grade facility. So it means that it has to be cleaned up properly. You have to follow the guidelines of a good business operator. So that should be considered. But about the size or what can be used, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, Lynda, maybe the type of buildings that you think would be suitable from your research?
Yeah, look, all farmers at the moment right across Ireland, we all have our old outhouses or something on the land, or a shed that's not being used sometime, you know, or we could really take a corner of a shed or of a cattle shed, insulated, get it up, and obviously, if you're going down the route of food, you have to have it within a certain spec. But even just to start, just to get, you know, what do you need? It's very, very feasible in order to have 2 crates full of crickets, just to learn about them, see what they think, you know, see what you think of them, because it is very easy to say, oh, you don't normally buy a herd of cattle when you're starting off. You might buy 1 or 2, or to see, you know, how you get on with them. But certainly, you can literally start a cricket farm in an 8x4 garden shed, you know, that's insulated, that has that you have a good control on moisture in there, that you make sure that the heat temperature is controlled, and after that you're pretty good to go. Just even to get used to them, get started, and the main thing is to start, just to get started on farming.
Carlos, thanks, Lynda. Carlos, question for you about the Valusect project and the voucher scheme. Can you let us know how people can contact you or to maybe put in an expression of interest?
Yeah. So they can contact me. I think I can provide you my email address, and that's fine. But also we have a dedicated website for the Valusect project, and one of the sections in website they describe the process to apply for the voucher scheme. what we can provide as a consortium to help the SMEs. So I think we have all these details in Teagasc website as well, dedicated to our project, but I can share all this information with you, Barry, and maybe then you can disseminate to the audience today. That's not a problem.
I can safely say that we've never had as many questions on any farm business options webinar as we've had today. One more question, and this will be the final one there. How much to invest in the start of a mealworm farm? Would any of you have any ideas on that, the level of investment that would be required? And I know it depends on the scale as well, but maybe for somebody starting off.
I think if you start with very small, then with like maybe you need to buy your box, your crate, you need to isolate a little bit the shed that you're going to use. You maybe need some seed, but with a few €1,000 you can have a decent trial actually. Of course, if you want to go bigger, then I think you need to think about more €50,000 if you really want to start producing at a bigger scale. But as a starter with a few €1,000 you can get started. Yeah.
Okay, we're good. We're going to leave it at that. We're on 12 after 12 o'clock now at this stage. Lots of questions, lots of interest in today's webinar. I want to thank you. I want to thank Carl Coudron from Inagro in Belgium, my colleague Carlos Álvarez in Teagasc in Ashtown, and also to Lynda Bolger from Celtic Cricket Farm in Carlow. These presentations that they presented today will be online afterwards. They're going to send them on to me, and we'll upload them onto the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie/farm business options, as well as the live the recording of this live webinar as well. I want to thank you all, our viewers who've watched this webinar series since last September. We did it as a COVID-19 exercise, as a new way of disseminating information, and obviously great interest in it, a new way for us within Teagasc of getting information out to you as well. So maybe in the autumn, this is the last one of the series. Maybe in the autumn we'll start doing a couple of more webinars as well, because we do find there's good interest in them as well. So thank you all, and enjoy the summer, and we will talk to you all again at some stage in the future. Bye for now. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye everyone.